Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. What a beautiful day it is together here at the University of Hong Kong. I'm Daniel, a senior manager at the HKU Jockey Club Enterprise Sustainability Global Research Institute. And it's an absolute pleasure to welcome you all to the dialogue with Dr. Jane Goodall, jointly organized by Jane Goodall Institute, Zurich Insurance Group, and our ESGRI Research Institute.
And I'm Wendy, also a senior manager at this institute. We're delighted to gather here in this historic heritage, Loke Hall. This venue has witnessed 100 years of history of Hong Kong, countless of enlightening discussions, and groundbreaking ideas.
Today is no exception as we're about to dive into a topic of immense importance, integrating biodiversity into corporate sustainable responsibility. In an era where the need for sustainable practices is more pressing than ever, today's dialogue promises to be enlightening.
Yes, we're sure many of you have been looking forward to this event, just like us. This afternoon will be filled with enriching conversations, inspiring speeches, and thought-provoking discussion. And remember, this event is not just about listening. We encourage you to actively participate by asking questions, sharing thoughts, and making the most of this incredible opportunity. Also, the organizers have exhibition booths near the entrance of this hall, so please do visit them after this event.
Without further ado, please join me in first welcoming Professor Hongbin Cai, Dean of HKU Business School, to deliver the welcoming remarks. Professor Cai, please.
Dr. Jane Goodall, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Welcome to Hong Kong U. Welcome to this wonderful event. Now, Jane is a legend that has inspired generations of people around the world. So we are all fans here to attend this event. Now, Jane came to Hong Kong U last time in 2018. So it's a great honor and pleasure to see Jane again back to Hong Kong U after 6 years. Let's give her another round of warm applause. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jane. And I think Jane sets a basic example of a long and meaningful life. And she has inspired generations of people for her passion for knowledge and love for animals, for her focus, dedication, and persistence. These are all the things that we want our students to have. But not only for young generations, I think she also inspired old folks like myself, who from time to time think about retirement plan, enjoying life. Now, I think, in China, there's a phrase called post-90. And this refers to people who are born after 1990. So I think Jane this year turned 90, and she certainly redefined the term post-90. She's been going around the world. I just learned that doing this work tour, traveling like 300 days a year, advocating biodiversity, sustainability, and ESG. Such incredible efforts. So Jane, you have to come back when you are 100 years old. Back to this. Thank you so much. And today we're talking about the topic is on biodiversity and corporate responsibility. I think Jane once said, every individual is a force of change. And together, collectively, positive changes are possible for a better world. So we cannot agree more at Hong Kong U. And we believe that higher education, universities, and in particular, business schools can play an important role in advancing the cause of sustainability. So at the Hong Kong U Business School, many of my colleagues, faculty members, professors, I see quite many of them here today, are doing cutting-edge research on ESG-related topics from business discipline, economics, finance, accounting, management. In one internal conference, more than 80 professors participated, presenting their research. And so this is very, very encouraging to us. And from our educational efforts, we've been introducing a master program on climate change, master program on sustainability, finance, and accounting, and ESG courses and contents are covered in our educational programs from undergraduate all the way to PhD with increasing importance. And recently, we, with the support of Hong Kong Jockey Club, we set up the Hong Kong U Hong Kong Jockey Club Enterprise Sustainability Global Research Institute. And this is Hong Kong U Hong Kong Jockey Club ESG Institute. And with the support of colleagues from the Institute, we just recently published the first ESG report for our school, which showcased our commitment to sustainability. Now, with research, education, and all the other efforts, we're also aware that it's very important to engage with the people and organizations outside the university in advancing the causes of sustainability. So today's effort, today's event, I think is a very good example of that kind of efforts. So here I would like to thank the co-organizers, Goodall Institute Hong Kong and Zurich Insurance Group for their support, their collaboration. And I want to thank all the colleagues from these two institutions, as well as Guojun and our own colleagues at Hong Kong U, Hong Kong Jockey Club, ESG Institute, for organizing these wonderful events. Let's enjoy the fruits of their efforts and enjoy the insightful speeches and dialogues of the distinguished speakers. Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Tai. Your words have truly set us a motivational tone for today's event. Please get seated.
As we continue our journey through today's event, it gives me great pleasure to welcome Professor Guojun He, Director of the HKU Jockey Club ESG Research Institute. A world-leading scholar in the field of environmental economics, Professor He has dedicated his career to sustainability research. Please join me in welcoming Professor He. His topic is the economic value of biodiversity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, dear Dr. Goodall, Mr. Eric Hui, Mr. Erickson Chan, Dean Tsai, and distinguished guests and friends. Welcome to Hong Kong U campus. Today I was given a few minutes talking about the value of biodiversity. So before we start diving into this topic, I'd like to start with a fun fact. Do you know how Hong Kong got its name? Hong literally means fragrant. Kong means harbor. So Hong Kong basically means, in Chinese, fragrant harbor, right? So this place used to be famous for its fragrant algal wood, which was highly prized and for its oil and its incense. Sadly, due to the overexploitation and habitat loss, algal wood has become an endangered plant in Hong Kong, and now we can barely find it in this area. As an economist, I cannot help but to really think about issues in terms of money and cents, even when it comes to something as invaluable as biodiversity. So a question that my students always ask me, can you put a monetary value for biodiversity for humans? This question is important, especially for policymakers who have limited resources to allocate and they need to think how to use the money wisely and efficiently. Here, using this opportunity, I want to tell you two stories which coming from research but highlights the importance of biodiversity and its economic values. which hopefully would motivate more scholars and researchers and students to study and to care and to learn about this issue. Okay, let me talk about the first story. That's about Indian vultures. This is vulture, okay? I know vultures are probably not everyone's favorite bird because they are often associated with death, right? They fly around, they feed on mostly animal corpse. And the recent study, however, published in American Economic Review, shows that they are extremely important for humans. Okay, let me explain what's happening. The study basically shows that more than 500,000 Indian people died because of the near extinction of vultures in the country. How did that happen? Here's the story. In the 1990s, farmers in India started to use an anti-inflammatory drug called diclofenac for their livestock, this is a very common drug for cure pains and also for cure inflammation. But they are extremely toxic for vultures. Basically, they cannot process this specific drug. And then the widespread of this use basically kills 95% of vultures in India in just 10 years. Okay? After vultures disappear, what happened is that the corpse of the animals now are going to be left rotted, and then they are going to spread the bacteria to water, to rats, and also to dogs, which in the end pass through all those infectious diseases to humans. And in places where vulture population declined most, you will see that people die more from those infectious diseases. They estimate that human mortality increased by more than 4.7%, which is about 100,000 people, additional deaths per year in the country, which translates to nearly $70 billion annually. Who would thought that the decline of vultures actually kill people, right? Brings away so much human lives and also such large economic costs. That's the first story and the research I want to share. The second story I want to share is about wolves and deer, okay? A question for you. When you think about wolves and deers, which one do you think is more dangerous to humans? Yeah, wolves, right? Because wolves are kind of cold-blooded killers on top of the food chain predators, while deer is often characterized as a lovely and gentle animal, right? Seems like to be a very easy answer. But what if I tell you that wolves can make the roads safer, while deers are the culprit of vehicle collisions? Okay? So statistics shows that in the United States alone, each year, deer cause about 1 million car accidents, resulting 29,000 injuries, more than 200 deaths, and nearly $10 billion loss. A recent study, again published in the leading journal Proceedings of National Academy of Sciences, shows that the presence of wolves actually help to significantly reduce deer and the vehicle collisions by 25%. Interestingly, this kind of reduction wasn't really driven by wolves just hunting and eating deer. In fact, it's mainly because deer are fear that they are being hunted, so they no longer can walking around on the road. So that significantly reduced the traffic accidents. And they also estimate that the economic benefits of introducing wolves is 63 times more than the cost of verified losses of predation on livestock. And those are just very simple examples in which recent studies are trying to emphasize species biodiversity are so important. They could have massive, long-lasting impacts on humans, and we are all in part of this interconnected system. And our survival is closely linked to the health of our nature. So that's why we are here today. And that's why we're here to discuss biodiversity and our ecosystem and our planet. So I will spend the last 2 or 3 minutes trying to introducing Dr. Jane Goodall. Really, she doesn't really need any introduction, but I do want to use this opportunity to show my respect and how much inspiration Dr. Jane has given us. So Jane is a world-renowned ethologist and a conservationalist. More than 60 years ago, she began to study and pioneered in those chimpanzee behavior studies in Tanzania, transforming our understanding of the relationship between humans and animals. Today, I think her mission is more to trying to empower younger generations, empowering us to make the world a better place for both people, for animals, and for our shared planet. And Dr. Jane Goodall founded the Jane Goodall Institute in 1977, now operating in 25 regions and countries, including Hong Kong. I was just learned that they basically, one of the main initiatives in Hong Kong is they try to clean up the beach side, right? I think the statistic I was just informed is about 60% of beach cleaning is conducted by Jane Goodall Institute in Hong Kong. So this institute also leads in chimpanzee and habitat protection, community-level conservation, and youth empowerment through the very ambitious Roots and Shoots program, which are now available in nearly 70 countries worldwide. She received numerous awards, including Kyoto Prize, the Medal of Tanzania, the Legion d'Honneur, and the Templeton Prize. She is also a United Nations Messenger of Peace and the Dame of the British Empire. Her achievements underscore her profound impact on conservation and our understanding of the nature world. So 6 years ago, as mentioned by Dean Cai, Dr. Goodall visited Hong Kong and left us a lasting impression. During the interview she with the South China Morning Post, she said, I quote, okay, nature, when allowed, will come back. Animals on the brink of extinction have sometimes recovered when they were given another chance. This quote deeply resonated with many of us here. Following her visit last time, the Hong Kong Science Museum hosted an exhibition after her name, which attracted more than 450,000 visitors across the globe. In 2021, she published her latest book called The Book of Hope, a survival guide for trying times. And last year, her latest film, Reactions for Hope, was premiered, and the film is now currently showing at the Hong Kong Space Museum until early next year. So I would highly recommend you to read the book and also go to the museum to see the movie if you have time, okay? Without further ado, it's my great pleasure to welcome Dr. Jane Goodall to Hong Kong U. And Dr. Goodall, we also very much look forward to your keynote speech and discussions that will follow. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor He. Thank you, Professor He, for shedding light on the economic implication of biodiversity. Your insights serve as a crucial reminder of the pressing needs for sustainable practices in a corporate world. Before we move on, to commemorate today's event, we would like to invite everyone to take a group picture. Please remain in your seat while our photographer takes the picture. So please share your prompts if you have one. And for the rest of us, let's give a big thumbs up.
Let's give us a big thumbs up, everyone.
Let's memorize this happiness moment. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you. Now on to the highlight of our event. Ladies and gentlemen, we are truly privileged to have with us Dr. Jane Goodall, the founder of Jane Goodall Institute and the United Nations Messenger of Peace. Dr. Goodall's life and work are a testament to the power of dedication and passion. Please give a big round of applause to Dr. Goodall and welcome her to the stage.
Well, thank you for a wonderful welcome, wonderful introduction. And we're here to think about biodiversity, right? There's not much biodiversity in this space. I see human, 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 human. I don't see any insects. There may be the odd spider. But at least we can bring the voice of biodiversity into the room with chimpanzee, this is me, Jane. So, and also, I brought two other little biodiversity representatives, which maybe in the panel discussion we can tell their stories. This is Ratty, this is Piglet, and of course there's a reason I have them, and this is Mr. H. So, with that said, I'm really interested in the last talk because you talked about vultures, wolves, and deer. So that might have been me talking about biodiversity. In fact, the whole story about the vultures is in the book I wrote called Hope for Animals and Their World. So it's interesting to me how things have changed. I suspect there's nobody in this room as old as me. I know there's nobody older than me. Looking around, I see nobody nearly as old as me. But maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think so. So during my lifetime, more than any of you, I have actually seen the loss of biodiversity. And if I think of where I grew up in the UK, in England, we still have the same house, my sister and I. And so what I've seen over the years, we've lost more than half the bird species that I used to watch as a child. We've lost, I would say, almost 90% of the insects that I used to watch. In the summer, if we opened the window at night with the light on, within 5 minutes the room was filled with flying moths and bugs. Now I get really excited if one moth comes in. That's how we have damaged the world. And if we look at the picture of the loss of biodiversity around the globe, it's a pretty dark picture. And the more you think about it, the more you get concerned. So why does it matter? Why does it matter if all the other animals go? If the wolves and the deer go, the deer won't be killing anybody. And if there aren't any vultures, then probably there aren't any cattle either. So why does biodiversity matter? We have to realize that we are a part of the natural world. And the tendency today, particularly with many young people, they're always on their iPhones, their social media, they're doing things virtually, they're Zooming and so forth. And there's an increasing feeling among the youth of separation from the natural world, a feeling that we don't need the natural world. We've got all this technology, so why do we need nature? Nature's messy. We can't organize it properly. So let's do without nature. But as I say, we're part of it, but not only are we part of it, we depend on it. We depend on it for clean air, water. We depend on it for just about everything. But what is it that we depend on? We depend on healthy ecosystems. And I learned about the forest ecosystem when I was at Gombe studying the chimpanzees. I could spend hours out in the rainforest. And so you get to understand that an ecosystem is composed of a complex mix of plant and animal species, and each one has a role to play. So it's like the damage that's done when vultures disappear. And there's a knock-on effect. When one species goes, another species was dependent on it, and that one gradually disappears. And if you think of the ecosystem as like a beautiful tapestry, with each species being a different thread, and as a species vanishes from that particular ecosystem, it's like a thread being pulled from the tapestry. And if enough threads are pulled, the tapestry will hang in tatters and the ecosystem will collapse. And that's what's happening around the world. In area after area, the ecosystem is collapsing. We cannot today separate the loss of biodiversity from climate change. The two are inextricably linked. And as the globe heats up, if animals and plants cannot adapt to the new heated world, then they will perish. So we are living in dark times, aren't we? And I see humanity sometimes, it's as though we're at the mouth of a very long, very dark tunnel. And right at the end of that tunnel is a little star shining. That's hope. But it's no good sitting at the mouth of the tunnel and hoping that star will come to us. No, we have to roll up our sleeves and we have to climb over, crawl under, and work our way around all the different obstacles that lie between us and the star. Yes, loss of biodiversity. Yes, climate change. Poverty, because people living in poverty will destroy their environment in their struggle to survive, to make money from timber or charcoal, to make more land to feed their growing families, or to make money from selling farm produce. And then there's overconsumption, people who consume far more than they need. They buy far more than they can consume. And in some parts of the world, this is leading to obesity because people don't know when to stop. What other problems are there? So many other problems. We're killing the soil with industrial pesticides and herbicides and artificial fertilizer, killing the soil on which we depend. And as we kill the soil, we add more artificial fertilizer, and the runoff goes into the rivers and eventually into the sea. So we're poisoning the water, the water of streams and rivers, and the water of the ocean. We all know that forests and oceans absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and store it. And as the ocean becomes more polluted, it can absorb less and less carbon dioxide because of the acidification. As forests are cut down, all that CO2 goes back up into the atmosphere. Then another enormous obstacle is industrial agriculture, particularly of animals, industrial animal farming. For one, it's horribly cruel. And let me just spend a moment here saying, why is it horribly cruel? Well, when I went to study chimpanzees in 1960, I had not been to university. I was just somebody who was passionate to learn about animals, and I wanted to live in the wild with animals in Africa, ever since I was 10 years old. And I got there, and I was offered amazingly to study our closest living relatives, the chimpanzees. We share 98.7% of the expression of DNA with chimpanzees. And so I gradually learned more and more about how like us they are. And after 1.5 years, my mentor, Dr. Louis Leakey, wrote to me and he said, Jane, I picked you because you hadn't been to university. I mean, other reasons as well, but he said, because I knew your mind was uncluttered by the very reductionist attitude of science to animals at that time. Now I want scientists to take you seriously. So I'm sorry, you have to get a degree. We've got no time for an undergraduate degree. So I've got you a place in Cambridge University to do a PhD in ethology. Well, I didn't even know what ethology was, and you couldn't Google back then. So But anyway, it's simply animal, well, it's behavior. You can have human ethology as well. So I was nervous. Here I was, going to Britain's top university in science at that time, never having been to college. Imagine how I felt when these learned professors, of whom I was in awe, told me I'd done everything wrong. Jane, you shouldn't have given the chimpanzees names. No David, Greybeard, Flo, Goliath, Humphrey, and so on. You should have given them numbers. They're your subjects. And this is scientific, to number your subject. And you can't talk about chimpanzees having personalities. You can't talk about them having minds capable of solving problems. You certainly can't talk about them having emotions like happiness, sadness, fear, despair, and so on. Why? Those are unique to humans. Moreover, you should not have empathy with your subject, because to be a scientist, you've got to be objective. You can't be objective if you show empathy for the creature you're studying. Well, fortunately, I had an amazing teacher when I was a child, and he had taught me that in this respect, these erudite professors were completely, totally, utterly wrong. That teacher was my dog. You can't share your life in a meaningful way with dog, cat, bird, I don't care what, and not know that we are not the only sapient, sentient beings on this planet. So I just quietly went along talking about the chimps as they are, with their vivid personalities and their emotions so clear to see. And because they're our closest relative biologically, and because of all I was learning about similarities in behavior, kissing, embracing, holding hands, begging for food, males competing for dominance, standing upright, swaggering from foot to foot, maybe shaking a fist, reminding me so much of some human male politicians. Seeing that they have a dark and brutal side, they're capable of killing and a kind of primitive war, but they also show love, compassion, and true altruism, as when an unrelated adult male may adopt a motherless orphan and save that child's life. Gradually, science began to change. Geographic sent a filmmaker, Hugo van Lawick. His pictures began to go around verifying everything I was talking about. And gradually, scientific attitude has begun to change. So why am I talking about all this in relation to industrial animal farming? Every single one of those cows and pigs and sheep and geese and ducks and chickens, they all have a personality. They all can show emotions. If you keep one and know about it, you know what I'm speaking is the truth. And rats don't have a good reputation. Rats are so intelligent. They make amazing pets. Ratty represents a giant forest rat from Africa. They've been taught to detect landmines buried under the ground. They've helped to clear Mozambique. They're working in Angola and Cambodia. They're learning how to climb into the containers and detect illegally trafficked animals or their body parts. And some of them are being trained, I've watched them being trained, to go under the rubble after an earthquake or a bomb. And if there's somebody still alive, they ring a little bell around their neck and somebody can go and try to rescue that person. Google Picasso, not Picasso the artist, Picasso, and you will see a pig who is so thrilled when she sees an easel and a paintbrush. Watch her painting, the joy expressed, the excitement, and her paintings are selling for $5,000 and more. And everybody says, what a special pig. She's not a special pig. She's an ordinary pig rescued from intensive farming who's been given a chance to show what pigs truly are. So this intensive farming is unbelievably cruel, but in addition, huge areas of land are cleared to grow the grain to feed the animals. More is grown to feed animals today than starving people. That's a shocking statistic, but it's true. Masses of water is used to change vegetable to animal protein. And as you know, in many parts of the world, fresh water is getting scarcer and scarcer, with climate change leading to longer droughts in some parts of the world. And then these animals, particularly the cattle, create a lot of methane gas in their digestion, a very virulent greenhouse gas. So these are just some of the obstacles we have to try and get through to reach the star. And it includes things like discrimination, racial intolerance. There are so many problems, but the good news, there's people, little groups of people working to try and solve every one of those problems that I've mentioned and all the ones that I haven't. The sad thing is, so often they're working in silos and they're not thinking holistically. So a very, very simple example, there's a group of people been trying hard to close down a coal mine. Yes, they've done it. All those CO2 emissions are no longer going up into the atmosphere, but they haven't thought about the people who lose their jobs. In America, anyway, there are organizations that specialize in training people whose industry has closed down in doing alternative work. So if people start thinking holistically, then it'll be a win-win-win situation. And it all points to the fact that we cannot do things alone. It all points to the fact that we need to collaborate. We need to go into partnerships. We need to have links between the corporate world and government and civil society. We need to work together. This planet is in dire states. I was just with a group of people called Planetary Guardians. I'm apparently a planetary guardian, but anyway, the lead scientist was tasked with going around and working out for various different issues such as climate change, loss of biodiversity, et cetera, loss of soil and so on. How long do we have before the tipping point? Before it reaches a stage when it's going to be very difficult to slow down and reverse. I've always said there's a window of time when, if we get together, we can slow down climate change, we can slow down loss of biodiversity, we can begin to reverse the harm that we've done. But I didn't know the result that came from this 2-year investigation of science around the world. 5 years. We have 5 years to get together and try and slow down these horrific harms that we've done to the planet. 5 years to move in the right direction so that we can gradually reverse. Do we care about the future of the planet? Do we care about the future of our children and grandchildren? Do we care about the amazing, incredible, awesome variety of species with which we inhabit the world? If we do, we've got to act much faster than we have been, and we've got to act together. So we are you know, I'm 90 now. I don't know how many more years I have. People say, what keeps you going? Because, first of all, I'm a very obstinate person, and I'm not going to give in. And when things go wrong, then we just have to get together and fight harder. And that's what we have to do now. You know, as I have been traveling the world for so long, as I have been seeing change, people say to me, but Jane, surely you can't have hope. And there are times when it's very difficult. The recent US election made hope seem a little bit further away, a little bit harder to grasp. But the reasons I have for hope still hold. are young people. I started the Roots and Shoots program. Maybe we can talk about it a bit more later, but it's the young people. When they understand the problems and we empower them to take action, they're changing the world. As I speak to you now around the world, there are young people and they're planting trees and they're clearing up trash and they're raising money for various issues and they're working to help in animal shelters. Roots and Shoots, you choose what you want to do as long as your group together is helping people, animals, and the environment. That's why it's different. The young people get to choose what they do. They can also choose to join the global campaigns that we have, because Roots and Shoots is now in 71 countries. And my second reason for hope has already been mentioned, and that's the resilience of nature. Give nature a chance, and the beautiful greenness of the natural world will return. And yes, animals will be and can be and have been given another chance. Thirdly, this intellect. I mean, animals are way, way, way more intelligent than anyone gave them credit for. And, 10 years ago, if I'd stood here or if I'd stood in places around the world and talked about trees communicating, I would have been laughed out of the room. Now we know trees can communicate, and so can plants. We know how intelligent many animals can be, but no animal could design a rocket that goes up to Mars with a little robot that crawls off to take photos of the surface of the red planet. No animal could design the internet, and so on and so on. But when I say we're the most intellectual creature to ever walk the planet, I deliberately don't say we're the most intelligent, because what intelligent species will systematically move towards destroying its only home? Elon Musk may believe that he's going to find a planet in his lifetime where humans can live and siphon off half of our species onto that planet, but I don't believe that's true. We've just got this one beautiful planet that we call home. We've got to work together to save it. So what do we need? We need to regain wisdom, the wisdom of the indigenous people, which said, we make this decision now only after considering how it will affect people, generations in the future. Now, how will it affect me now? How will it affect the next shareholders meeting? How will it affect my next political campaign? Those are the kind of criteria. We need to regain wisdom. We regain wisdom by developing a different mindset that works not just on profit and loss, but also joins the head with the heart and thinks about the future and not only the present, which means alleviating poverty, which means reducing unsustainable lifestyles, which means a different way of thinking. And then my final reason for hope is the indomitable human spirit. People who tackle what seems impossible and won't give up and succeed. People of all types. And there are icons like Mahatma Gandhi, icons like Martin Luther King, icons of that sort. But then there's ordinary people. A refugee arrives. He doesn't have any money, doesn't have any friends, but he pulls himself together. He starts a little tiny business, and he ends up with a little family, a little tiny house. And he is an example of the indomitable human spirit. Mr. H was given to me 33 years ago by a man called Gary Horn. Gary Horn went blind when he was 21. He decided for some bizarre reason that he wanted to become a magician. Everybody said, but Gary, how can you be a magician if you're blind? He does shows for children, and they don't know he's blind. He sets out his props beforehand. And at the end of his show, he'll tell them, and he'll say, something may go wrong in your life, because we never know. But if it does, don't give up. There's always a way forward. He does skydiving and deep sea diving and cross-country skiing, and perhaps most amazing of all, he's taught himself to paint. He never painted before. And I have a portrait of Mr. H. He's never seen him, only felt him. He gave him to me for my birthday 33 years ago, thinking he was giving me a stuffed chimpanzee. And I took his hand and made him hold the tail. Gary, chimps don't have tails. He said, never mind, take him wherever you go, and you know my spirit is with you. So there is my little message, which is partly to do with biodiversity, but we cannot think of biodiversity in isolation. We have to fit it in to everything else that we're doing to harm or to save the planet. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Goodall. Please remain on the stage. Please remain on the stage for our next session. Dr. Goodall's passion and commitment to the environment are truly inspiring. Her words today have not only enlightened us, but also reminded us about our responsibilities towards this planet. I believe many of us are touched by your journey and will follow your footprint. So while we are still setting our stage, we would like to take a moment to thank our supporting organizations. They are Cathay Pacific, Go Impact, HKU Business School Alumni Association, KPMG, Linkrate, Swire Properties, the Swiss Chamber of Commerce in Hong Kong, Town Gas. Thank you very much for your incredible support.
Thank you all. So our journey through this thought-provoking day continues with a panel discussion titled Collaborative Conservation, Uniting Stakeholders for a Sustainable Future. Forming the panel are distinguished panelists, including Dr. Jane Goodall, Professor Guo Junhe, Mr. Erickson Chan, Group Chief Information and Digital Officer of Zurich Insurance Group and Chairman of the Board of the Jane Goodall Institute Hong Kong. Moderating this discussion is Ms. Candice Wong, Head of Strategy and Sustainability, Zurich Insurance Hong Kong.
Let's welcome them to the stage.
Candice, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining this meaningful panel discussion. I'm Candice from Zurich, Hong Kong, taking care of strategy and sustainability. It's my utmost delight being the moderator of this panel discussion, being an admirer of Dr. Jane Goodall. I volunteer to this role to engage with Dr. Jane Goodall, an idol that I had since I was a child. So her documentary not only exposed my horizons to the worlds of primate, but also encouraged me to take advantage of exploring this world, having adventures in Congo, which I brought my gorilla here today as well as visiting other brilliant creatures in Tanzania and Amazon, etc. So following the speeches of Professor He and Dr. Jane Goodall, so now may I invite Erickson to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Erickson Chan. I'm privileged to be the chairman of Jane Goodall Institute Hong Kong chapter, and also I'm the CIDO for Zurich Insurance. Very, very happy to be here. Glad to be with Jane today.
Okay, thank you. So despite the small size of Hong Kong, actually we are very blessed to have a merit of terrestrial and marine habitats and niches, where we are home to more than 3,300 species of vascular plant, over 580 species of birds, almost 200 species of freshwater fish, 19 species of reptiles, and how many butterflies can you imagine? It's almost 250. Can you imagine 250 species of butterflies in Hong Kong? So the biodiversity is impressively rich for such a small place in Hong Kong, being one of the most densely populated cities in the world. The new nature conservation policy was promulgated in 2014 in Hong Kong to regulate, protect, and manage our natural resources that are very important for the conservation of biodiversity in Hong Kong. And one of the objectives is to collaborate with private sectors, including the business community, non-governmental organizations, and academia, to protect our nature conservation. And decades have passed, witnessing some notable achievement. We see the establishment of Hong Kong Jockey Club, Enterprise Sustainability Global Research Institute, by Hong Kong Youth Business School, and funded by Jockey Club Charity Trust. However, we all feel that the pressing concerns of rising temperature in Hong Kong. So in the last October, we have the record-breaking, very hot weather warning in October, reaching the temperature of 33.6 degrees in October. So this prompts the questions, are we doing enough to safeguard our environment and our future? So now today's panel discussion will be on collaborative conservation, uniting stakeholders for a sustainable future. We will have a discussion around this important topic to see whether we're moving towards a harmonious coexistence with nature. So before we start, Jane, correct me if I'm wrong. There is no chimpanzee in England, right?
No what?
Chimpanzee. Is there any chimpanzee in England?
Chimpanzees have become one of the endangered species, many of them critically endangered. Their numbers have dropped from over 1 million when I began to no more than 300,000, stretched across all these different African countries.
Right. So there is no chimpanzee in England where you grew up, right? So what brought you to Africa when growing up in the UK?
Okay, well, when I was growing up, there was no television, and I learned from being outside with the birds and the squirrels, and from books. I love books. And so I love books about animals because I loved animals. And we had very little money, so I used to get a couple of pennies pocket money, and I saved and saved, and I found a little second-hand bookshop. And I was 10 years old when I found this very small, cheap edition of Tarzan of the Apes. No film back then, no TV, it was the book. And I bought that book. I read it from cover to cover up my favorite tree. I fell passionately in love with this glorious Lord of the Jungle, because 10-year-old little girls can be very romantic. So what did Tarzan do? He married the wrong Jane. So that began my dream. I'm going to grow up, go to Africa, live with wild animals, and write books about them. Everybody laughed at me. How will you do that? Africa's far away. You don't have money. It's a dangerous place, and you're just a girl. But not my mother. She said, if you really want to do something like this, you're going to have to work really hard, take advantage of every opportunity. And if you don't give up, hopefully you find a way. I've taken that message around the world, particularly to children in disadvantaged communities, particularly to girls, especially in some countries. And I wish Mum was alive to know how many have come up to me later and said, Jane, thank you. You taught me because you did it. I can do it too. And that I emphasize because the importance of having a supportive mother cannot be overemphasized. A mother who supports the passion of the child, even if it's a little boy of 3 who says, I'm going to be an engine driver. And some parents will say, oh, don't be so ridiculous. Your father's a doctor. You're not going to be an engine driver. Let him believe he's going to be the best engine driver in the world, and you know he's going to change. He won't remain wanting to be an engine driver. So supportive parents, not just mothers, happened to be my mother, because my father went off fighting in World War II. So.
Thank you. So actually we can tell that action actually starts from knowing the fact, knowing the knowledge. So Harrison, what's your passions around protecting the environment? You've been the chairman of Jane Goodall Institute. Have you encountered any funny story? Have you been enjoying the environment in Hong Kong?
Yeah, obviously the environment in Hong Kong is different. So compared with other countries, other cities, or non-cities. So biodiversity is very different. So therefore, as Jane mentioned earlier, everything is interrelated, from biodiversity or sustainability. And I think you mentioned earlier, this year Hong Kong experienced the hottest weather ever. This is all interrelated. And our environment, climate change, we all need to do something together. It's like because of climate change, naturally, the natural habitat will get disrupted, destroyed. And then if you don't have natural habitat, then we have less animals. So because of the nature of Hong Kong, so we do things not only for biodiversity, but they focus a bit more on sustainability. Also, what can we do to reduce the carbon emission so that ultimately to lower the temperature of the planet Earth, and then we want to be net zero as soon as possible. So then we give the planet a chance. As you said, the planet has the capability to recover by itself. It's really strong. So we need to give the planet every possible chance. Every city can do something. Every company can do something. Every single individual can do something.
But we have to remember that there is a time limit.
Yes. So absolutely. So we need to have the sense of urgency, and everybody needs to be part of this. So everyone in Hong Kong can do something about it.
Right, we've talked a lot on collaboration, how can work together to reduce the carbon emissions, help to mitigate the climate change. So Professor He, I would like to understand a little bit. You've mentioned in your speech that engaging the government, the policymakers is very important, right? So I understand you are the first Asian scholar winning European award for research in economics, environmental economics. So can we quantify the benefits like what Dr. Jane Goodall has mentioned, like the healthy water, the clean air? Can we quantify that to engage our government policymakers?
So to start from, I actually want to say that the research on the value of biodiversity is actually very thin. Just now I give you 2 examples, but many other things are not quantifiable yet or not quantified yet. So basically for policymakers and for some decision makers, they still have this challenge by thinking on how do we approach this question, right? Because everything is interconnected, which make it difficult to address. I think that's the first challenge. But more broadly, I think there are indeed multiple ways that academia or economists and other ecologists trying to come up with that help us to better assess the value of biodiversity to human environment, to human society. As you just mentioned about clean water, about clean air. Actually, for example, it's very simple. If you look at the buildings in Hong Kong, we all know that the buildings facing the ocean has a much higher price, right? What's that quantify? That's basically the value of a nice view. The same also applies for pollution. If you have good air quality, the housing price goes up, people want to stay there. Also apply for water pollution, also apply for many other things. So I think the first thing that we should try to approach and try to solve is really trying to quantify those what we call non-market goods. Right? They are goods, but they are not really traded in the market, so you need to find ways to infer the values. I think that's the first step. And then the second step would be really about corporate strategies, in which now we do see more and more corporates start to think about climate risk, both physical climate risk and transition climate risk, as well as the biodiversity risk. Right? They are concerned that certain changes in the environment is going to affect their business, or policy changes are going to affect the business. So we do see this trend that corporates are trying to more and more integrate those considerations in the business model, which I think is upside in the past maybe 5 years, as Zurich and many other companies has been doing. They all of a sudden think, okay, biodiversity matters, so they want to integrate those considerations in their business model. And that's what I want to share.
Yeah.
No, I think this is absolutely critical because, as I said earlier, every company has the responsibility. As the company is more established, then naturally the responsibility is bigger because you can have more possibility to make a difference. So, and there are two ways I think that make a difference. One is how can you change your own company to operate differently, so to make it more sustainable. Second, and how can you use the opportunity of your company to influence your surroundings, your communities, and also your customer, your clients. So one, you need to do things tangible to change the operations of every company. And every company, different industry, you can do different things. And then, like, if I give some examples, like what we're insurance company, what can insurance company do, right? So insurance company, there is our carbon emission mainly is coming from our own energy consumption, our own transportation means, if we're flying or if we're driving using a gasoline car. And then how do we commute? Do you drive or you take public transport? As simple as that. We are not a manufacturing company. But even though not a manufacturing company, there's still a lot we can do. So we set as you said, time is running out. We set a very aggressive target. We need to be net zero by 2030, which is only 6 years away. And we are meeting this target. Compared with 2019, we already reduced 2/3 of our own carbon emission. So, and this is possible. And then you can influence your surroundings, i.e., that is, how can you help your customer, your clients, or your communities? So then, as an insurance company, we can also invest. We invest on green projects, participate in green bonds, provide insurance to the greener industry, put more and more focus. This is what you mentioned about win-win. This will become making business itself sustainable while we also create a more sustainable future. So I think every corporate, every company can do something about this.
Can I go back one step? Your CEO is making these decisions, right?
Yes.
Okay, so let's look at the CEOs across the planet. They're all different. They all have different motivations. I was talking to a CEO of a big multinational corporation in Singapore, actually. And I was talking to a whole group of CEOs. He came up to me afterwards. He said, Jane, I want to promise you for the last 8 years, I've been really, really trying to create a more sustainable company. And he said there were 3 reasons. First of all, I saw the writing on the wall. I saw we were using up natural resources in some places too fast for nature to replenish them. Secondly, I saw consumer pressure beginning to play a role. People beginning to say, how was this product made? Did it harm the environment? Was it cheap because of unfair wages? Was it cruel to animals, like cheap meat from intensive farming? And then they're beginning to change their mind and buy another product. And even if that product costs a little bit more, and as they're poor people, they can value it more and waste less. But he said, what tipped the balance for me was my little girl. She was 10 years old. She came back from school one day, and she said, Daddy, they're telling me that what you're doing is hurting the planet. That's not true, is it, Daddy? Because it's my planet. So we have to find a way of reaching the heart.
Absolutely.
It all ties in with reducing poverty.
We need to
You
raise...
see how they're all interrelated?
We need to raise the awareness so people can understand. We need to do things as tangible.
Got to want to do it from within. No good fighting them, arguing with them. She got into his heart.
Right, we've talked about to raise the awareness, so to reach the heart. So in Hong Kong, so in your view, so how do we engage with corporates or other stakeholders? Because one of the keywords in our discussions lies around uniting stakeholders, right? So for different stakeholders, how do you think is the most efficient way to engage them, to reach their heart, and to create the urgency?
I can share my experience working with companies. I think the message I want to deliver is that we should simplify things, trying to break down complex biodiversity or climate change issues into simple, relatable, and actionable items and initiatives. For example, I work with Alibaba, a major platform companies, on how to reducing the single-use cutleries in food orders. Then I just tell them, if you change the default into no cutlery by default and awarding people some green points, which is not monetary, that significantly change people's behavior, right? So having actionable little items is the key to engage corporations. By the way, Ant Forest, Alibaba Group also grows many trees. Why they are growing many trees? Because they think telling people about carbon emissions and carbon points is too complicated. Let's tell you, if you accumulate points, I can grow trees for you. And that's a huge success in that platform. So I think my approach is really to say, let's figure out the smaller things that can be taken action on and try to solve those little ideas. Right, so some very simple idea can be extremely powerful in changing the climate, affecting the behaviors of individuals.
But their children will want to know, but Daddy, why is it important to plant trees? How does that help my future?
Is that the question for me?
We can buy a book from Jane Goodall and then tell the story to your children.
Well, I can share a bit of my own work. I'm now working on kind of assessing China's massive programs that are trying to replanting trees in the country, across the country in the past 20 years. We see that trees brings about a lot of benefits. First, they're good for local climates, so it's no longer as hot if you have many trees near you. Second, they reduce pollution. Third, it purifies water. And fourth, it also increases bird diversities and richness. So along all those dimensions, we see a lot of outcomes are associated with the trees. So if there's one simple suggestion I would like to give, then focus more, planting more trees, and restore more forests.
And I ask you that question because you're simplifying it to help the planet by planting trees. But the children are going to say, but why? That's why I asked you the question. I mean, of course, I know the answer, but you see what I mean? So there's a level at which you need to address the underlying complexity even in a simple way, because the children will want to know. They're so much more educated than we were.
Do you have any suggestions for me and to talk to my students?
Well, and the tree planting thing, in some places has gone really wrong, because you've got to plant the right species at the right time and look after it. And I know one program, I think it was in somewhere like Ethiopia, and they planted thousands of trees. And they planted them the wrong time of year, and all of them died. So it's
Then I consider the failure in planting trees rather than really planting trees, right? So there's a science behind the planting trees, and we need to follow.
No, it's just, we've been talking about it the whole time, everything being interrelated. And children are at the stage when they need to learn some of the complexity. I'm not disagreeing with you saying planting trees, it is a good thing. By and large, it's making a big difference. But I'm just getting into the nitty-gritty, because that's why we're here, isn't it? I think.
It's not only planting trees, it's planting the right trees. Because often, I think as we all learn from the experience of planting trees. You cannot just plant any trees. No. And then we need to be the local species, pick a mix of local seedlings. So then you will flourish. Then that will become sustainable with animals coming back. And so it's science behind what tree. It's not just a survival rate. It has to create that diversity in there. Exactly, it's the biodiversity.
And also, how important to plant trees in cities. Because, you know, the trees grow up and it serves to cool the atmosphere. It helps rain. It helps stop the soil from eroding. And it provides some biodiversity in the city. And, you know, it's now proved that we need nature. In Japan and Canada, doctors can prescribe on paper time in nature, so many hours a week, for not only mental illness, physical illness as well. And it just, and particularly for the good psychological development of small children. Time in nature is important. We are part of and we depend on, as I began, the natural world.
All right, I'm giving the sign of time reminder. So my last question to you all is, what's your advice for different stakeholders here today as an individuals and a corporate representative or government bodies to take actions? What's your advice? What needs to be changed?
Yeah, very simple. Get involved. Get involved right away. In case if you wonder how, okay, I will use this opportunity to promote JGI in Hong Kong. You get involved, our volunteers are here, so participate. There are many different activities. So once you get involved, you can start to feel it, then it will come from here, then it will become sustainable. Individually, or if you are from any company, do get involved now, please.
And also, you have the advantage of a network around the world, because we got 25 Jane Goodall Institutes, but then the Roots and Shoots, which is a JGI program, as I said, it's 71 countries.
Yeah.
So there's a network around the world, and that is very, very inspiring, encouraging, gives you a feeling of strength.
Yeah.
Many people together.
We can learn from each other. Tony, why don't you stand up and wave to everyone? This is, if you want to get involved, get in touch with Tony. Tony and the team here is doing all the work.
Yes, I cannot agree more. Basically, one of our deliverable by Jockey Club is trying to bridge NGOs with corporates. Because like Jane Goodall Institute and many other institutes, NGOs, they actually know, they have the professional knowledge about how to do things right. While corporates now, if they want to do something, they don't have the expertise and the knowledge. So it would be a great opportunity that we can bridge corporates to NGOs as well as academics to work together and contribute to this discussion.
Thank you. So in the interest of time, I have to close this panel discussion. In closing, let me take the insightful suggestions from our panelists. Get involved, take actions, and I would like to borrow the quote from Dr. Jane Goodall, which I like very much. Every individual matters and has a role to play, and that every individual make an impact every day. So if we choose wisely, we are really together to make a better world for the future. So thank you for listening to our panel discussion, and thank you to our esteemed panelists, our engaged audience, and most of all, Dr. Jane Goodall, for inspiring to strive for a better and more sustainable world. Thank you.
Thank you, Candice. Thank you, Candice. We do have to... Thank you, Candice. We do have the Q&A section. Would you mind moderating that Q&A section, please? Q&A section. Yes.
I'm too aware of the time reminder, so I forgot the Q&A section. Sorry, audience. So yeah, let's start the Q&A section. Anyone? The lady with long hair?
Yeah, Dr. Goodall, thanks indeed for your very inspiring talk. We have talked now in the panel discussion a lot about corporate responsibility. I would like to go back to something you had mentioned during your talk, which was your experience of starting your PhD at university and your critique of how scientific environment was set up back then. Ever since you have stayed engaged in the academic community, what would be your critique of that academic scientific work and how it's set up today? And in respect to that, what is your view on really quantifying biodiversity?
I have strange ears. I hear loudly the question, but when it's a microphone, I can't distinguish the words. So I'm going to have it translated for me.
I think your question, if I get it right, can you quantify the value of biodiversity? Is it, if I sum it up correctly?
Do you want me to come up and repeat?
No.
Okay. Yes, yeah. I mean, it is related to that, but I would like to relate it more to a general critique how scientific setups in university work, and whether it is the right way to do, or what would be her viewpoint on quantifying biodiversity, but moreover, what is her view on how scientific settings are taken out today, in respect to how she started her career and her critique of how scientific objects were set up back then.
I will summarize your question into, if university is trying to quantify biodiversity, this approach, what do you think about this approach? I will try to summarize. I don't know accurate or not, but
well,
yeah.
Quite honestly, this is not my job. I'm not trying to quantify anything. I don't even really think of myself as a scientist. I think of myself as a naturalist. I just got given this PhD, but my job now isn't to quantify. My job is to raise awareness.
Yeah, so I cannot agree more, but I do understand there are a trend to try to quantify biodiversity. Certain species is equal to certain how much economic value. But I think that is seemingly makes sense because you can use this to prioritize how to use your limited resources. But then, actually, if you think it through, because we have been talking about, it's so interrelated, everything. It's not like if one drop, it's not only that value drops, the whole ecosystem will drop. So you cannot, you might able to quantify one species, but then if one species go, the interrelated value is way, way bigger than that. If I understand the question correctly.
I think
No, okay. All right.
much more important is if people are very poor and they're living in a rich, biodiverse area, then conservationists used to go in and say, okay, you get out of here, this is to be preserved for biodiversity. Unless you help those people find another way of living. And that means sometimes that you put a value on, say, the trees. And that's been done. Costa Rica was the prime example. So the people who are cutting down the trees up in the mountains, then it was decided, okay, the trees are providing the city below with clean water, clean air, all kinds of benefits. So a small tax was put on the city people, and that money was paid. So instead of cutting down the trees for money, the people looked after the trees for money. That's how it should be monetized.
I just want to add on that. Yes, I acknowledge it's extremely complicated to quantify the value of different species and all that. But despite of that, they are extremely powerful in policy design and enforcement. Just as Jen mentioned, when you have those systems that basically pay for eco-services, right? You pay farmers not cutting down their trees, you need to have some rationale for setting that value, and to what value people are going to stop cutting the trees. That's the calculation we need to make. Just like carbon pricing, or the social cost of carbon. Scientists and economists trying very hard to estimate the social cost of carbon so that we know if you emit 1 more ton of carbon, what is the social cost you bring up to the society, which is going guiding through all the money and the policies and drive changes to the society. So I think this is extremely difficult question, so it requires a lot of other scholars to dive into and study those issues.
Yeah, while putting a money tag to something is easy to visualize, I think something cannot be just simply monetized, just like water. You can buy a bottle of water with $10, but without water, we all cannot survive. Okay, so let's move to the next questions.
Testing.
The lady in the middle.
Thank you. My name is Kat, and I'm from Now TV and View TV News is from a local TV station. And after heard your speech, I think I won't eat any pork or beef in the following weeks. So my question is about, because we're now in Hong Kong, so Hong Kong has a specific problem is housing. So people are now maybe living in some tiny rooms and not enough houses to live in, but meanwhile we need to protect the environment. So that maybe is hard to balance. So how can we just balance to protect the environment and also ensure that people have enough rooms to live in, because Hong Kong got a large number of people, the popularity is very large, but also we want to keep the animals in their original places. So how do you see this? Thank you.
Not sure. Who are you directing the questions to?
Yes, Goodall, Dr. Goodall, thank you.
The question is, there's a increasing housing needs in Hong Kong, and then with the increasing housing needs, how do we balance this priority versus biodiversity?
That is something that is not, it's not my job to answer, I don't think. You know, it's a very important question. And I have to say at this point, my son is working, and he's just about completed a house that uses only 10% of the cement that a normal house uses. Its walls are very thin. It can withstand earthquakes and hurricanes and floods and fire. The prototype is just about ready, and he says it will revolutionize construction business around the world. So maybe Hong Kong can be the first one to bring his method in and help solve the, the housing problem.
Thank you. Next question. Gentleman, yeah.
My question is for Dr. Goodall. So I'm a business and law student, so my knowledge of biodiversity is purely fundamental. I'm sorry if I say something inherently wrong. But with the rise of gene editing that's allowed the concept of de-extinction of certain lost species, would the restoration of these lost species and their release into the wild, would it pose an invasive threat to the current ecosystem, the species in the current ecosystem? That's my question. Thank you.
Okay, let's give. She just got a little bit. Just I think yeah. Give it us a minute.
Yeah.
So I would. Okay, maybe I'll take this as the last question. So if I interpret correctly, this gentleman is a law student, and then his question is about there are increasing trend of genome editing, and if use genome editing to restore some extinct species, is it invasive or not? If I summarize, apologies guys, it's kind of hard to hear your question from up here. So even myself, did I capture the essence of your question? If to release the restored species from genome editing, would it be an impact to the environment? That's your question, right? Okay.
So it's about recreating.
So recreating species from genome editing back to the wild, and then your view on that.
Extinct species?
Yes.
Well, in some cases, I think it can be great. Like they're trying to recreate the dodo, and the conditions for a dodo are much the same now as when the dodo was alive. But then there's people spending thousands and thousands of dollars on recreating the woolly mammoth. To recreate a creature from the Ice Age into a warming planet is totally ridiculous, a complete waste of money, and I think that money could be used for so many much better things, and it's a shame. But on the other hand, it is a method, and maybe some very, very crucial species could be used to bring them back, to play their role in the ecosystem.
Okay, thank you very much for your questions. So I understand you have lots of questions. So may I invite you to ask your questions later, and we will find ways to answer your questions later. So thank you very much for attending this panel discussion.
Thank you very much for our panelists.
Tell them that if they have desperate questions, they can write them.
If you have desperate questions, you can write them down.
And then we'll answer afterwards. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much for our panelists for the insightful discussion. Would the panel remain on the stage for the souvenir presentation session, please? May we also now invite Professor Hui Tang, Associate Dean, External Relations of HKU Business School, Mr. Eric Ho, Chief Executive Officer of Zurich Insurance Hong Kong, and Mr. Tony Jie, Chief Executive of Jane Goodall Institute Hong Kong, to join the stage.
Okay. First, we are very delighted to have Dr. Goodall to present her signed books, The Book of Hope, a survival guide for trying times, to Mr. Erickson Chan and Professor Hui Tang as co-organizers of the event. Let's take a group photo. Let's take a group photo. Okay. Next, on behalf of Zurich Insurance, Mr. Eric Chan will present Zurich's parrot to Dr. Goodall and also Professor Tan as a token of thanks.
Mr. Erickson Chan to Dr. Goodall and Professor Tan. Yes.
And also, on behalf of the University of Hong Kong and the ESGRI Research Institute, Professor He will present HKU's signature lion to Mr. Eric Hui and also Mr. Tony Zhe.
Mr. Eric Hui and Mr. Tony Zhe.
Okay. So let's take a group photo.
Thank you, everyone. Please take your seat while we invite Dr. Goodall, Mr. Erickson Chen, Professor Guo Junhe to remain on the stage for the media interview session. Thank you.
Today's dialogue has been a testament to the power of collective action and shared understanding. As we leave this venue, let's carry forward the knowledge and inspiration we've gained and channel them into actions that contribute to a more sustainable and diverse world. Please do visit our booths near the entrance for more information for our collaborative effort in fostering sustainability. This is the end of today's event. Thank you all again for joining and have a nice day.
We will see you next time.
Thank you.